let's get stuck into the news that Jose Mourinho has left Roma. What is next for the former Chelsea, Spurs and United manager?
Right, first of all, he needs a good holiday. He needs to just calm, because he's been boiling over the last few weeks, hasn't he, Jose?
He has been. You're absolutely right.
He's been like a powder keg, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks. So look, maybe this has been coming to this point, and it kind of, for Jose, look, and whatever anyone's opinion of him, you cannot deny how brilliant he has been.
Box office.
Right, over the years. But just the last few jobs he's had, there's this kind of other side to him, this kind of anger in there a little bit, isn't there? You know, that seems to rear its ugly head. Now, I've just put the question out there, Ali, just now, about whether or not there's another one here. Is there another job for Jose back here in the Premier League? Tons of people have been texting in, and there's some obvious ones. People, Eddie Howe's doing a great job at Newcastle, but people think that someone like Jose has got what's required to get Newcastle over the line, to get them to win something. And obviously
would be very harsh.
But that would be harsh, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be?
Yes.
Harsh? But Newcastle fans, would they want that?
No.
Do
you know something? I don't think they would.
No.
I genuinely don't think they would.
So I
said yesterday, Andy, I think there is an incredible understanding from the vast majority. You know what football fans are like, and that's the reason I'm saying this. But with Newcastle fans, I left that ground the other day, and of course they're disappointed. Absolutely disappointed. But every one of them I spoke to were appreciative of the fact that they were unlucky not to hang on, but they were beaten by a better side. And they're quite comfortable where they are at this moment in time. Yeah. In terms of their natural progression under Eddie and the new owners.
That game the other day, mate, was an absolute cracker to watch. It really was brilliant listening to you.
Oh, mate.
And it was such a great game to watch.
I
can understand.
One of the best games I've seen in years.
Yeah. I get the Newcastle fans coming out of the ground and thinking, do you know what? We can handle that. We can suffer that.
Correct.
Because our team have had to go against the best.
Correct.
You know, and been very competitive. So we'll see. But lots of texts coming in. Jose at Crystal Palace. People are saying things like that. You know, now, but do we think Jose would come back, Ali?
It's an interesting one.
To one like Palace.
I'm not sure.
He's always been used to going into the very biggest and best top jobs where you know, he's availed of the best. Would his ego
allow him to do that? Anyway, we need to find out. He leaves Roma 9th in Serie A. They crashed out of the Coppa Italia last week and lost 3-1 to Milan over the weekend. He'll be remembered there for winning the Conference League. See, he wins. That's the one thing he does in 2022, and has presided over 2 6th place finishes. European football expert Andy Brassel joins us now. Andy, very good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning, mate. Is this, first thing I'd ask you, Andy, is this a massive surprise?
I suppose it depends which perspective you're looking at it from. The fans will be very disappointed. There was almost a cult of Mourinho there. I mean, if we look at how he's changed the club, they've sold out 44 successive home games. Yeah. Do you know how hard it is to fill the Stadio Olimpico? Some of the best teams in Roma's history have not filled the Stadio Olimpico, but he created something. He created a feeling, and in some cases a sort of blind faith in him. But from the owner's perspective, the Friedkin family, they paid a lot of money to take over the club. It was a protracted takeover. Initially happy with his work, but the football's been terrible for a while. We know that. And the results have been declining as well. And they have been increasingly more angry about the performances of the team. Now, he's been coming out very publicly for a couple of months now saying, I want a contract extension. I don't want to go anywhere. I feel an emotional attachment to this club that I've never felt to any other club. And, you know, I genuinely believe him because of that relationship he's had with the fans. The first time I saw Roma in the flesh with Mourinho as coach, he went onto the pitch, took the ball off the referee and booted it into the stand, was obviously red carded, and he got a standing ovation as he went off. So what you were talking about, Andy, is about him being more angry. Yeah. Well, I think there are two sides to that. Firstly, I think it's the diminishing returns of a man doing the same thing and expecting a different result, because his football has not changed for a very long time. But it's also that he's sort of aided and abetted by that environment around him, that he can do no wrong. But look, I think the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of decreasing quality of performances and results, as you were saying, is last week in the derby at Lazio. You talked about them, Ali, getting knocked out of the Coppa Italia. But they turned up to Lazio. They barely had a shot. And that's just not acceptable in a derby. And for the first time, you heard a couple of fans going, come on, man, we can't play like this. We at least have a go. It's not an exceptional Lazio side. And it was embarrassing to some of those fans.
Yeah. Do you see him having a period now of reflection and going away and thinking about things, having 6 months? Or do you see him, Jose, wanting to bounce straight back in somewhere? You would imagine that being somewhere half decent, Andy.
Well, he's not massively prone to reflection, is he? Really, Andy? He's the length of his reflection is, I'm really great, aren't I? That's about it, really. So I think if you're looking for the next step, I think Saudi's the obvious one. I don't know why you would come back to the Premier League for a job that would be below your point. None of the big ones in the Premier League are going to take him. And I think if you go back 4 or 5 years now, Paris Saint-Germain would have done anything to get him at one point. The last time they had the chance, they're like, no, he's too toxic now. We're going to step away from that. And I think really what's affected his image is if you go back to the other final that Roma could have won, of course, they lost in the Europa League final against Sevilla. Yep. The way they behaved there, I think you had a lot of people going, no, Mourinho's not for us. Like, it's not worth all the baggage. And the thing is, people who watch Roma regularly looked at that and were like, he behaves like that every week. He gets his staff to swarm the officials. He gets his players to swarm the officials. They take it in turns. So you talked about Mourinho getting red cards. Well, it was his turn last week, but it was the assistant manager's turn the week before. It's a very studied way of like getting after people. I don't think people are really into that. And I think that final made people realise that, okay, Mourinho's had a bit of a mini revival at Roma, but he hasn't really changed his spots. I think he'll get a far more uncritical audience in the Middle East and, of course, a lot of money.
I just think Andy needs an audience, Jose. He needs... he's always sort of fed off the crowd and off of reaction and off of them against us. Does he get that in Saudi?
Well, that's what I think, Andy. I tend to agree with Andy there, because I think I take your point about Saudi, but I'm not sure there's a big enough audience for somebody like Jose Mourinho, and that's why I think potentially could there be an international job for him. I know Roberto Martinez is in at Portugal, but could there be an international job for him?
Well, I think Portugal would have been an interesting one if we go back a year or two. I think the fact that Martinez has gone in and done such a good job makes it almost impossible for Mourinho at this moment. And also, I think you need a certain type of character to handle the eventual winding down of Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, we're talking about paraffin and matches there. If we're talking about Mourinho, surely. I mean, that he's not the guy to handle that, even though they've worked together in the past. But in terms of that audience, he'll still get that audience in terms of global news cycles. If he goes to Saudi, people will still be really interested in him. We know that there is interest in him from clubs over there, and there are a few coaches on thin ice, as they always are in the Saudi Pro League. For me, while he considers the next step, that doesn't mean he's totally out on Europe forever, but to make a load of money, stay in the news cycle, and have a job, I think that is probably the short-term play. Whether that means he'll stay there for 1, 2, 3 years, I don't think that's necessarily the case. And maybe you could get to a point where people start forgetting how toxic he can be and give him a job in Europe again. But I think in terms of the biggest jobs in Europe, I think that time's gone.
Brilliant, Andy. Thanks for your time
Andy.
this morning, mate. Thanks for joining us.
Interesting, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, I don't care. It's box office, right? Simple as. So it'll be a story.
I mean, if Gareth at the end of the Euros, if Gareth says, right, that's me, I'm done, thanks very much, whatever. I mean,
no, they wouldn't, because they're terrified of him. And answer your question. Yeah, I think there's a number that we've already seen it in the text coming through. There's a lot of England fans that would take him. In 2 minutes.
You don't think the FA will go near him?
I don't think the FA would. I think the FA would be terrifying them. It's just I might be wrong.
Interesting.
I mean, from our point of view, it'd be brilliant.
Yep.
Absolutely brilliant. But I just don't think the FA would go near him.
TalkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.